Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to BrightGen Spring 18 release webinar. To introduce ourselves, for those who haven't met us or know us beforehand, this is myself, Clive Plat. I'm Head of Service Management here at BrightGen, and I'm joined by as usual, by my dear friend and colleague, Keir Bowden. Keir is BrightGen's Chief Technical Officer, but he's also a certified Salesforce Technical Architect and MVP, Most Valuable Player, if I think I've got that right. Some of you may know him by his alter ego, Bob Buzzard, who's very active on Twitter and a number of Salesforce community forums. This is our 17th Salesforce release webinar now. Winter 13 was our first. And this means that since we started, Keir has reviewed over 5,000 pages of release notes. So you don't have to, as the saying goes. However, this release is just a piffling 455 pages. So it was just a little bedtime reading for Keir this time around. For our regular viewers, today's show will follow the usual format. But for our new customers, in a second, I'm going to hand over to our very own Keir Bowden, who will go through the features of the new release for you. And if you have any questions, please do use the chat function on the webinar console, and I'll collate these and pose these to Keir at the end, and he'll endeavour to answer them at that point. So enough of waffle from me. So here he is to top our bill, the man himself, Keir Bowden.
Thank you for that introduction, Clive. You get more and more like a ringmaster every one of these we do. It's marvellous to see your progress.
Thank you so much.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. So without further ado, this is our agenda, and we'll dive straight into the first item, which traditionally now is fond farewells as more features expire and go off to meet their maker. So Internet Explorer 11, this isn't actually leaving us as soon as we'd expected. It was supposed to be going December the 16th, 2017, a very exact date there for some reason. I guess that tied in with a Microsoft timeline. However, you can now opt in to additional support through to the end of 2020, but you do have to opt in. You must contact Salesforce for that. Fairly major change for the developers out there. Force.com is now the Lightning platform. But there must be around 1 billion references, I would have thought, to Force.com and all the Salesforce documents that have been out there for 10 years or so. So I'd imagine it will take a while for them all to switch over. So probably best to get into the habit of being able to move the two around seamlessly in your head. Salesforce One now has a new name. It's the Salesforce mobile app, and I think that's about the last reference to Salesforce One after briefly everything was marketed as Salesforce One for a while. So it's another Salesforce mobile app, and legacy charts have been retired for it. So it's highly likely you're already using the new charts because they were enabled. But if your org was created before summer 16, you had the option to revert back and to disable the new charts. But that option's now gone. New charts for everyone, but I imagine that doesn't really affect anyone anyway. And Chatter is losing a few of its older features. So Chatter Answers, we've referred to this a few times in recent webinars. Chatter Answers is now retired, having long been replaced by Chatter Questions. Chatter Messenger retires on March 30th. That's kind of instant messaging between Chatter users. I don't think very many people used it. So I don't think that'll be particularly missed. And we're also going to lose Chatter Desktop come summer 18, which is something we will miss. That's my favourite Chatter client, sadly. But it hasn't received a lot of love in recent years, hasn't received the new features. So that is on its way out. So, and a slight departure from our usual format, we have some enhancements that apply across the entire product, whereas normally we focus on specific clouds. So we're going to go into those first. And please note that from now on, if I don't explicitly state that something is available in Classic, that means it's for the Lightning experience only. And I warn you now, almost everything is for the Lightning experience only. So in my opinion, this is how Salesforce will get people over to the Lightning experience, is that all new features will only be available there, and eventually you'll need something badly enough that you'll have to switch over. So something for those who are interested in GDPR, which we all should be, you can now store the data privacy preferences for contacts and leads in a new S object, the individual. So this captures the individual's preferences for collection, storage, sharing, packaging and deletion of personal data, and also whether you're going to be tracking their movements through geolocation and their online activity through the web, and also whether they wish to hear about your products and services, so whether you can market to them in that way. But do note, this is just capturing preferences, so this on its own doesn't make you compliant with any legislation. You need to ensure that you're respecting these preferences when you're processing the individual's data, and you need to make sure you've got the appropriate policies in place. So to use the new data privacy feature, you navigate to Setup, Settings, Data Protection and Privacy, and then you open that, and you check the Make Data Protection Details Available in Records box, followed by the Save button. But also there's some sound advice on there, which is to add the individual fields to page layouts. And here's an example of the individual record create screen. So you can see I'm 16 or older, which won't come as a surprise to anyone. I don't want to be tracked through geolocation. I don't want to be marketed to, and I'm allowing my individual data to be exported. So next up, some changes to help us all work a bit more efficiently in the Lightning experience. So macros are now available on most objects in LEX. You'll need, if you want to use them within LEX, you'll need to add the macro component to the utility bar of the Lightning application that you want to use them in. And the recommendation from Salesforce is to avoid opportunity products, knowledge articles, and the email message object. So there's a really nice feature of the Lightning experience is the utility bar, because what that allows you to do is have some behavior like a macro or like an alerting function that applies across all aspects of your app rather than having to add it to each page individually. Oh, I'm just being asked by Clive to expand my screen a bit. I'll just do that. Bear with me one moment. Hopefully that's better and it's filled up the whole thing. Looks like it. Okay, so moving back on. So quick text now supports merge fields, but if these aren't applicable to the current record, they will render as blank. So you'll just have a gap in your text if you use that and it's not on the appropriate record. Right, next up, something that will be familiar to any developers on the call if they've used the VS Code IDE, temporary tabs. So the idea of a temporary tab is if there's something I want to use just for this session, so a record, a list view, a dashboard, something like that, and I need to access it a few times in this session, but I don't think I'm going to need it forever, such as the opportunity record, for example, that I'm viewing here, I can add a temporary tab so that I can easily go back to it without having to navigate back to opportunities, go through a list view and find it. So to do this, I open the drop-down menu on the Opportunities tab, and you'll see there's a new option there, which is Open in New Tab. So if I click that, that adds the tab to my app navbar, but with an asterisk and the name in italics, and that's highlighting the fact that it's temporary. When I navigate away from this application or my session ends, this temporary tab will be removed. However, much like I do in my IDE, occasionally I create a temporary tab and I think actually this would be really useful. I want to keep that for a while. So if I do that here, I can click on the menu, but on the temporary tab, and I can choose to add it to the navbar permanently, in which case its appearance changes to match the regular tabs. So that's now in that application, even when I come back to it after my current session ends. So effectively what this is allowing me to do is change the tabs that I see in an application. So by clicking, once I've added a tab in there, by clicking the pencil icon on the right-hand side that you can see there, I can change the order of the tabs and I can remove items that I've added via the temporary tabs route. It's important to note here that users can't do anything with the tabs set up by an admin. So it's worth revisiting your existing Lightning apps and making sure that the tabs you've got in there are the ones that are needed. If you've got some tabs in there which are just for edge cases, just for one or two users, but you had to add them in because there was no way of them getting to them, you might want to revisit that and remove those because the users that require them can add them to themselves. However, another important point to note, to add a tab, they first need to add it as a temporary tab, and then they can convert it to a full-time navbar tab. You can now change the theme for the Lightning experience. So if you navigate to Setup, User Experience, Themes and Branding, you can then choose from the list of themes. And I think there's about 6 or 7 in there already. And you can try before you buy. You're not committed to changing everybody's theme without having any idea of what it looks like. there's a preview functionality on an action button that isn't quite in that screenshot. And if you preview, then you can navigate around the Salesforce application in the particular theme on a number of screens. So if I recall correctly, this screenshot is from Cloudy Sky, if you like that particular aqua look. That's not the end of theming though. You can also create custom themes via the new theme button. So if you hit that, then that'll open up the new theme screen that allows you to specify a name, image, main branch color, and a few other items. However, use this with caution, because it's very easy, as you can see here, to create a pretty horrible looking theme with lovely greens overlaid on reds. So make sure you preview it and try it out on a number of screens to check that it looks okay for your users, because I can't imagine too many would thank you if this turned up on their desktop tomorrow. Next, completely new area of functionality, something that's been available on the App Exchange for a long time. And this is surveys. So these are part of the Health Cloud offering. So unless you've got a license for that, you'll need to pay an additional fee to use surveys. So they don't come for free yet, at any rate. It's possible they might in the future, but at the moment it's paid. So you can create multiple question types through the new question and answer editor. Survey responses are searchable. You can embed them in Lightning pages and communities via new standard Lightning components, or you can include a link in an email that you send off to a customer or a user. And finally, for our general section, the URL format for Lightning Experience is changing. This doesn't apply to console applications and communities, and this is being rolled out as a critical update. So for all new orgs, it'll be enabled by default, which won't affect them because no one will have seen the URL format before on that org. And existing orgs, it's scheduled to apply in summer 18, so somewhere around June of this year. And there's an example there of the old and new formats. So if you have URL references in code or configuration that are hard-coded, you need to make sure that you update these before enabling the critical update. As always, enable and test in a sandbox, and if in doubt, contact your friendly service manager, who will be more than pleased to help you. So that wraps up the general section. Next, moving on to our old friend, the Sales Cloud. So we haven't talked a lot about Einstein on these webinars as a rule, because it was fairly nascent technology and not many people using it. So a few more people are now. So we're going to start covering the kind of the highlights that we think will be of interest. We're not going to try and cover anything by any means. But there is an updated Einstein readiness check for anyone that's considering going down that route. So if you navigate to Einstein Platform Readiness Assessor, and on the resulting page, you click Assess Your Sales Cloud Readiness. You then have to follow some instructions to open up access to Salesforce open up access for Salesforce to your data, if I put my teeth in correctly. So essentially what you're doing is you're opening up your data and saying to Salesforce, yes, you can scan it for the purposes of finding out whether I'm ready for Einstein enablement. Doesn't mean you're giving them access to your Salesforce, to your data forever, and they can do what they like with it. It's purely for that particular purpose. However, you need to make sure that that fits with your compliance policies, etc. And you'll then receive an email with your readiness report attached, which will also be available as a Salesforce file in your org. As you can see here, I'm about 40% on the pre-release org that I tried that out. I'm quite surprised it's that high, to be honest. It's good news. Some further Einstein changes in this release. Opportunity scoring is now generally available, having been in beta for the last release. So the score of the opportunity is based on the record details, the history and activity. The history of the record and the activities related to the opportunity and its associated account. Lead scoring, which has been around for a while, now shows the key positive and negative factors. So it gives you a bit more information about how it's actually generated that score. And it also attempts to infer the rank and department of the lead based on other information in the lead record. And all Sales Cloud Einstein licensed users now have access to the Sales Cloud Einstein dashboards, whereas before it was limited to 5 users. So you had to choose your 5 favorites and run the risk of disappointing the rest of your users, whereas now everyone can have it and be happy. You can now create leads from LinkedIn lead gen adverts. So when someone fills out a form, that can create a lead on LinkedIn, that can create a lead in Salesforce. So this is something that applies to both Lightning Experience and Classic. but there is a bit of scaffolding required first. So first off, you need a LinkedIn account that is connected to your Salesforce instance, and you then have to specify any default values required and map to LinkedIn form metadata fields to Salesforce lead fields. So not unlike defining the mappings of lead fields to opportunities and accounts and contacts when you're converting leads, for example. And a few other randomish sales changes. If you don't create opportunities when converting leads, you can exclude this from the lead conversion process, so users will just never see it. You can now use Path, which was formerly known as Sales Path, to track campaign progress and to track the life cycle of an account by your preferred pick list. You can access the account and contact hierarchy via a new button on the record header, which you can see there, the one that looks like a little tiny org chart. It saves you having to scroll down and click on fields and the like. And a few more in the opportunity space. So opportunity splits are now supported in the Lightning experience. You can create custom actions on objects. And on price books, you can add up to 50 products to a price book in a single operation. And when you're choosing a price book on an opportunity, the last price book that you used will be the first one that's presented in the list, rather than having to scroll down if it's down near the bottom. And finally, another slight privacy improvement. If you don't want anyone to know that you've been reading their emails, you can prevent read receipts being sent via the Salesforce inbox functionality. And a couple of things on list view emails. You can edit the signature before sending now if you need to tailor it to your audience. And you can also see the remaining number of emails available to send in the composer, because Salesforce limits you to a certain number of emails per day that you can send. So you can see whether you're about to breach that or if you're consuming an awful lot that other people will leave other people somewhat poor. Continuing with the email composer, the browser spell checker is now integrated with the email composer, so it'll highlight if it thinks you've spelled anything wrong. And when you insert a template, the first thing you see is your list of 5 most recently used templates, on the assumption those are probably the ones that you're using most frequently. You can still get to your others, but those will be presented at the beginning of the list. And just some other changes. You can define the size of the activity timeline now, so you can limit it to the last 10 activities or something like that. But there is a show more button, so they're not hidden away forever. There is a clear all button on reminders, which means you no longer have to work through all your reminders individually if you get a lot of those. And you can automatically update contact and lead records when you add them into meetings. And our final point in Sales Cloud, duplicate jobs. These are available in performance and unlimited editions only. I don't know why that is, but that's what the release notes say. And they are background jobs that scan your account, contact, and lead data for duplicates. They can use standard or custom matching rules to detect those duplicates, and they'll send you an email notification when they've completed. And then there's a results page for the job, and on that you'll see any suggested duplicates, and you can take action to merge them in there. Okay, next up, Service Cloud. So first off, we have some knowledge enhancements, the first couple of which apply to both Salesforce Classic and the Lightning experience. You can now add article content to case emails, and you can access knowledge in Live Agent in the Live Agent console while you're chatting with customers. And for the Lightning experience only, draft articles can now have an approvals process, and you can reassign draft articles if the original author is no longer around for whatever reason. The reason those two are only Lightning experience is because they were already available in Classic for a long time. Okay, next, Omnichannel. So there's a new setup flow to configure Omnichannel in the Lightning experience, which does make the setup quite a bit easier by the look of it. And supervisor mode is now supported in LEX as well. Triggers and workflow are now available on the agent work and service presence S-objects. So if you need to have any automation around those, you now have that opportunity. Not process builder yet. And routing limits have been increased. So you can now route 30,000 work items per hour, which is up from 15,000 in previous releases. And you can now have up to 100,000 total queued work items, up from 30,000. And I would suggest if you've got 100,000 queued work items, you're doing very well. So good luck to you. So other enhancements of note in the Service Cloud. You can carry out mass quick actions on cases, leads, and custom objects. So, for example, adding the same comment, maybe many thanks for your patience, to a number of open cases every morning. Not that we'd ever do anything like that, eh, Clive? No, good Lord, absolutely. No. They'd all be closed before anyone went home for sure. And you can apply the action to up to 200 records at a time, but you do have to enable this through the list view search layout configuration. You can finally search emails in Salesforce through the global search functionality and the Lightning experience. So this searches the CC, BCC, from, to address fields, plus any custom fields of the types shown here. And finally, in Service Cloud, you can use Path, again formerly known as Sales Path, but now rolled over everything, to show the progress along the life cycle of a case. And again, you can choose your own pick list for the stages. Okay, moving on to our halfway topic of analytics. Dashboard tables are now supported in the Lightning experience, and they certainly show a little bit more information than the tables do in the classic dashboards. They can display up to 200 rows and up to 10 columns from the source report's report type. And the reason I sort of paused and said report type loudly there is that you don't have to have the columns in the report to be able to see them in the dashboard. As long as they're in the report type, they're accessible to the dashboard. You can now brand LEX dashboards using themes and color palettes. So here's an example donut chart component from my pre-release org, and that uses the default colors. So if I then go in and edit the dashboard, click the settings gear icon, I can choose between the light and the dark theme. As you can see, they're just under dashboard theme, or I can select a different dashboard palette. And once I've done this and I go back to the dashboard, my donut chart colors change to match. So at the moment, you can just select from the ones that are there, but hopefully as time goes on, we'll get the ability to customize those a bit more heavily as well. Know that color palettes apply to the entire dashboard, whereas themes can be defined at the dashboard or at the component level. Some other enhancements in analytics, all of which apply to the Lightning experience. Folders are now supported in Lightning Experience Search. Line and bar charts in dashboards now support a maximum of 1,000 groups, which is up from 500 in previous releases. Donut charts can now display both totals and percentages rather than having to choose between the two. And you can now subscribe to dashboards to receive email updates or simply to schedule refreshes. And each user can subscribe to a maximum of 5 dashboards, so you won't necessarily be able to refresh every dashboard that you have on a schedule. So I pause for a moment for a well-earned sip of water. So next up, communities. So once again, there's a new Lightning community template. This is fast becoming a tradition with Salesforce releases as well. And as usual, all future enhancements will be made to this template, so you need to upgrade if you want to stay current. And as is often the case, the new template may impact your community. And you can find out more about the possible impacts in the Salesforce help at the short link shown. As usual, don't worry about capturing the links. We'll send out the slide deck and the recording afterwards, as we always do. And as always, with anything that might break existing functionality, test it in a sandbox first. Do not enable this directly in your production edition because you're taking quite a risk. So among the features the new template brings are assigning audiences at the component level, so ensuring that specific content reaches the right people without having to have multiple communities, an upgraded reputation leaderboard, the ability to see trending articles by topics, and additional theme settings that allow you to easily see which pages a theme layout is associated with. Another quite interesting development, Marketing Cloud Journey Builder is now integrated with communities. So you can start your customers on journeys based on events such as joining the community or creating their first case or chatter post, or if they're a member of a target audience, such as they've been inactive for a specified period, or based on membership of a chatter group or reputation above a certain level. So you can now market to your customers through communities as well as outside of them. Note that you need a Marketing Cloud license in order to use Journey Builder in a community. So the email and journey management work is still done in the Marketing Cloud as usual. You can just hook that into the community. Other improvements in Community Cloud in Spring 18, you can now use CRM fields to target audiences, such as showing different pages to contacts from different departments, for example. Up to 8 levels of navigational topics are now supported, which is up from 3 in previous releases. Community users can now self-deactivate. So this is, in some areas, this is a regulatory requirement that just because someone has registered with you, they should be able to terminate that relationship at any point in time. So you can now do that in this release. There is also a critical update coming to remove Salesforce instance names, such as NA8 EU3, for example, from URLs when my domain is activated. So this will be automatically activated on March the 19th, 2019. So quite a long time in the future. We're just kind of bringing it up now. Sorry, March the 16th, 2019. We're just bringing it up now just so that everyone kind of is vaguely aware of it, and we'll continue to refer to this in future webinars as we get more information around it. And we're told that accessing a URL that includes the instance name will still work, and it will just redirect the user to the new host name. I guess at some point in time it will retire. As I say, as and when we have more information about this in future webinars, we will include that. And finally, in communities, Community Builder now has multi-language support, so you don't have to go out to site.com Studio if you need to create multilingual communities anymore. Next up, Chatter. So if your org was provisioned before Winter 16, you will receive an automatic update to Chatter, which introduces the following behavior. This has already been enabled on newer orgs, so if you're later than Winter 16, then you don't need to worry about this. So the current behavior for older orgs is that when you follow someone, you see everything that is posted to their feed, even if you aren't following the person that's posted it. Now, once the update is applied, if I post to Clive's feed, that post is only seen by him, people who follow me, and users who are @mentioned. So users who follow Clive but not me will not see my post. So there'll be a change there. Whether that will impact your users, I guess, depends on how people are used to that working, but be aware that this is going to happen. If your org has opted out of auto-enabling, this update will not be automatically applied. If you wish to opt out of auto-enabling, you have to contact Salesforce support. I haven't done this, so I'm not really sure what the process is thereafter. You can now share links to Chatter posts, much like you can on other collaboration tools and social media apps like Slack and Twitter, for example. So click on the share icon and choose the copy link location from the drop-down menu. This opens the link in a modal with it pre-selected so that you can copy it. But take note of the info message here. The link only works for people who have access to the Chatter thread in which it appears. So if you send it to someone who doesn't have access to that, they will get permission denied. And there you can see I've opened that in a different browser window, in fact, a different browser application completely, and it takes me directly to that specific post. Other new and updated Chatter features. You can receive in-app notifications when a group you're a member of is mentioned, but you have to configure your email notifications for all groups to notify you on every post. So you need to consider whether that's a price worth paying. Feed filters are now sticky, so if you apply a filter to a feed, the next time you access that feed in another session, the filter you applied will still be in place. You won't have to keep reapplying it, which should save a few seconds. Process builder and workflow rules are now supported for groups, group membership, topics, and topic assignments. So again, another few areas where you can have some business process automation around those events. And you can use hashtags to allow in polls and thanks so that you can organize those via topics. And you can preview files in the Salesforce mobile app in the same way that you can in the Lightning experience, which leads us neatly onto mobile. Which is quite, there's not much going on mobile this release. This is basically it, the interesting things that I could find. So remember, it's now the Salesforce mobile app as opposed to Salesforce One, and here are the features. So users in assigned territories related list on accounts is now available in mobile as it is on Lightning Experience. As I mentioned earlier, legacy apps are retired as of this release. Push notifications for Chatter group mentions are now supported, much like the in-app notifications on the Lightning Experience I mentioned in a slide or two ago. Same requirements around in-app notifications at the main site, that you need to configure your email notifications to notify for every post on all groups. So again, make sure you understand the ramifications of that. And finally, when you use the Salesforce mobile app, the Feeds tab that used to appear on a record has now been renamed Chatter. Okay, moving on to my personal favourite of customization, and this is our last topic. So well done for sticking with us, everyone. So the way you edit Lightning apps in Spring 18 is changing. So the screenshot here is an example of the old mechanism, which was a little modal pop-up in the App Manager setup page. So now when you edit an app, you'll be taken through into the Lightning App Builder. And you can change things via the links down the left-hand side bar rather than having tabs across the top. And also notice there's a new Pages drop-down menu at the top of the builder, which we'll look at next. So this Pages menu behaves in different ways depending on exactly what you're doing. So if you're editing a Lightning page, this menu will show you the 5 most recently used pages, as well as links to others or to be able to create a new one. So effectively, you're editing a page. There's no real relationship between this page and any other. So it just offers you the ones that you've been recently working on. However, when you're editing a Lightning application, it shows you all of the active Lightning pages associated with the application, including record and app pages that have been activated for the app, and all home pages assigned to a profile. You can sort this list by last modified or by page type as shown. The idea is here, if you're customizing in the Lightning App Builder, you can easily see all the custom pages and go and change anything on those if you need to. Conditional filtering is now supported in app and home pages, but these aren't associated with records, so you have to filter on other items such as the user who is accessing the page or the client that they're using to access the page. And conditional rendering for record pages has also been enhanced to include related object fields. So as you can see from the screenshot there, I've got a component that is only rendered when the related account type is prospect. So I'm guessing this is probably on an opportunity, and I've got a related account, and if that's prospect, then I'll show whatever it is this is. And I can also filter on other object fields in the same way the app and home pages can, so things like user and client. There's a new accordion standard Lightning component. There's a load of new standard Lightning components anyway, but accordion seems like a really interesting one because this contains vertically stacked sections that collapse when another section is selected. So this allows you to maximize use of screen real estate. You can have up to 25 sections in an accordion component, but the recommendation from Salesforce is that you limit it to 10. And each section can contain multiple components, so you should be able to fit everything you want in there. So we think this is the kind of thing that would be really useful for sidebars, where you potentially got a lot of information, but it's mostly accessed infrequently, so you don't necessarily want it all there front and center. You can now define separate overrides for each of Salesforce Classic, Lightning Experience, and the mobile app to standard actions, and this is a much clearer interface as well, I must say, than the previous one. So, for example, this allows you to specify a visual force override for Classic, a Lightning page override in Lightning Experience, and a Lightning component override for the mobile application. But then you can also choose to specify a Classic override and to continue to use that Classic override in LEX and in the mobile application too. But note that only record pages assigned as the organization default can be used as Lightning page overrides in LEX. So you can't use things that are just specific to an app in that situation. The health check has some new settings, which I'm sure you're all reading rather than listening to me, so I won't go through them. The only thing to say is that the letter in brackets afterwards shows the setting severity, so if it's high, medium, or low. If you've set up an existing custom baseline, you can apply the new settings retrospectively. So the first time you load the custom baseline after the new settings have been added, you'll be prompted to update it via the pop-up shown. So you just click Update Baseline and you're done. If you click Cancel, it just skips it one time. The next time you load it, you'll be prompted again, and so on and so on and so on until you give in and click the Update button, the Update Baseline button rather. And some other notable changes around customization. You can now warn users that they're being taken outside Salesforce via the redirection setup node. That seems really useful to me if you're concerned about where your users might be ending up. Next point is an important one if you have Lightning components that retrieve data via Apex controllers. So classes with or enabled methods, which simply means methods that are available to be called from a Lightning component. If you have a class with those methods and you haven't specified sharing in the class, so you've just left it as public class rather than public with sharing, public without sharing class. The behavior is going to change in Spring 18. So what used to happen was the sharing defaulted to with sharing, which meant the user's current sharing settings were applied, and they were only able to retrieve records that they owned or that had been shared with them. Once this critical update has been applied, which is scheduled for winter 19 for existing orgs, so a little bit of time, it will default to without sharing, which means that the user's current sharing will not be taken into account, and they will be able to access all records regardless of whether they've been shared with them or not. So you may end up with users being able to see more records than they should be able to. This brings it into line with how Visualforce, etc. works, but it may not be something you're expecting, so be aware of that. The standard Lightning container application will no longer be able to access the Salesforce REST API as of February the 10th. That's also my birthday, so it's obviously a birthday present from Salesforce to me. Wasn't aware I was doing that, but maybe I am somewhere. The style tag will no longer be allowed in Lightning components defined with API version 42+, which is basically this release and later. So Lightning component bundles have always had a separate file for styles. They should be going in there anyway. And as of this release, any new Lightning components that you create at this version or later will have to go in there. Otherwise, you won't be able to save it. The platform cache is now supported in the Lightning experience. So previously, this was only available in Classic, but now it's made it to LEX. And our final feature for this webinar, as everyone breathes a huge sigh of release, is a couple of new methods on the system.list class, contains an index of. So this might not sound like much to those who aren't of a developer persuasion, but it's going to retire a fair bit of code that wanders lists and tries to figure out whether something's in there and at what position it's located. Well done, everyone. This brings us to the end of the new features part of the webinar. So thanks for sticking with us, assuming anybody has. So as usual, we've taken a light touch, as I always say. I must come up with some new words. A light touch look at the features we feel would be of most interest to our clients and prospects. There's obviously a lot more to it than that. There's plenty more information at the official Salesforce release readiness site at the short link shown. So including, as usual, release notes, webinar recordings and videos. But in the continuing story of Trailhead taking over Salesforce, February is scheduled to bring a trail mix to allow you to familiarise yourself with the new features and a badge to accredit yourself in some way against the new release. So that is it from me. Do we have any questions, Clive?
Excellent. Thank you, Keir. Well,
do we have any questions apart from how much longer will he be going on for?
Well, that was amazing. 455 pages condensed into 50 slides is some feat. So well done. Yes, we do have some questions.
Oh dear.
So the first question was, will we be sharing the slides? Yes, definitely. We'll be sharing the slides and we'll be giving a link to a recording of this webinar as well. So if there's any particular features you just wanted to go over again and just to get it clear in your mind, you'll be able to do that. But yes, we will be sharing the slides.
Or if you enjoyed it so much, you want to listen to me giving the whole thing over again.
Well, of course, obviously, as well as that. So, so there's a question regarding the individual field in data privacy preferences.
Yep.
Despite your disclaimer at the beginning, you knew this was coming. Can you add that to a classic page layout?
That is a good question. I don't believe so, but I will check and follow that up.
Cool. Okay. Another question. Do admin tab changes override user preferences on subsequent deployments?
They won't override user preferences because the difference here is that users can't remove them. So anything you've added will automatically stay there, and anything you add afterwards will automatically be added to the app for everyone. What you can't do is do anything with the tabs that people have added themselves or the ordering.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Now there's a question now around surveys. Can surveys be sent to non-Salesforce users? No,
they can be sent to. They have to be users or they have to have a community user login. At the moment, nothing I've read has suggested that they'll be available to unauthenticated users as it stands. Okay. So unauthenticated people, rather.
Right. Okay. So next question: what criteria determines readiness for Einstein?
It'll be around the completeness of your data, and I would have thought the amount of your data as well, because typically with artificial intelligence, you're very constrained by the quality and the quantity of data. If you've only got 3 lead records, Einstein is going to have a hard job scoring those in relation to each other and saying whether they're any good based on previous information, based on previous performance. So the quantity will definitely be one of the key areas, and also the quality. So you need to have completeness and you need to have some consistency. If you've got fields on the opportunity where no 2 records have the same value, it's going to have a hard job inferring much from that. As to the rest of the details, we don't have all those details because that's something that Salesforce do in the platform, and we don't have visibility of that.
Okay, thank you very much. And last question. This must be a musical question. Can you do nested accordions?
So I haven't seen anything to say you can, but knowing the Lightning components framework as I do, I wouldn't be surprised if you could put one in there. What your user experience is like would be a very different matter. I would suspect not a great one.
Okay, and finally, one of the audience says thank you.
Well, that's very kind. It's nice to know my efforts
This one
are
person,
appreciated.
One person appreciated everything you just said. So well done, Keir.
Cool. Thanks for those questions, everyone. Quite a few this time, so good to see that happening.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so it wouldn't be a Salesforce release webinar here at BrightGen if I didn't butt in and give a plug for service management. Obviously, it is my baby. So we're doing another webinar next week, Wednesday the 7th of Feb. Same sort of format where myself and one of my service managers, James Burgess, are going to be joined by one of our key customers, Lawrence D'Souza at Heathrow, and we're going to be running through what service management, what our service management offering is here at BrightGen, and seeing, if we can convince you this will be a great thing for you to get more return on investment and more value out of your Salesforce platform using our service management offering. So please do join if you'd like to, and we'd be more than welcome. We'd love to see you. So
I should just point out that for anyone watching on YouTube in 50 years' time, this recording, this is Wednesday the 7th of February 2018. So if it's 2068, then it won't be happening next week.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. Yeah. Okay, so if that's all there is,
that's all there is.
I believe we're done. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I hope you found that useful. If there's anything that you want to discuss in more detail, do get in touch. Not a problem. We're quite happy to discuss any aspect of this release with you. So have a good evening, and thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Hope to see a few of you at the developer meetup tonight.
Goodbye.